Hello, I'm Mark Childhouse, and because things on the internet seem loose, their date reference is pretty quick. Today is Sunday, June 29, 2025. On Monday, May 26, 2025, we visited the New Mexico Farm and Ranch Heritage Museum, and not exactly sure what town that's in, the city it's in, but it had really positive reviews on the internet, and we walked into this museum. I'm not sure if you'd call it a museum or a farm or a ranch or what, and we were in total awe. This is a fantastic visit, very child friendly. I will warn you, a lot of it's outside, a lot of it's walking on prepared gravel, and we were there on a kind of warm day in May. And if you're going to visit there June, July, August, September, make sure you're wearing appropriate gear for hot sun weather. This is a fantastic facility. Live animals, cattle, horses were the two we saw. I don't think we saw anything else. And really good museum, facility, whatever you want to call it. A lot of explanations about farm equipment, ranching equipment, people that were in the area, and an outstanding leatherworking shop. And this is one of the places I would highly recommend you go. I will say this again, if I didn't already say it. This is a very child-friendly place. There's a lot of things to look at, a lot of things to read, a lot of things to talk about, and live animals to look at. So this is a fantastic visit. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in another one.
If I were at an aviation museum or a car museum, I would probably try to narrate every picture, and I'm not going to do that here, so you're probably going to find audio gaps as you go through this video. This is the New Mexico Farm and Ranch Heritage Museum, and this is the entrance as you come into it. And there were several pieces of equipment sitting out in front of it. A really nice building, and we had done a little research, and it said plan on, I think, 2 to 3 hours. And I think we spent about 3.5 hours there. Really good museum. Really enjoyed our time there. A very wide museum, a very kid-friendly museum. A lot of stuff to see, and really good signage to the degree that it was. And I'll show you quite a bit of the signage that I have for the displays is actually here and positioned before the display. So if you're watching this in YouTube, you can stop it, back it up, look at the signage, or stop it, read the signage, and continue with the video as you go. A lot of the stuff on display was in fantastic condition. Some of it, as you're looking at some of the tractors at the entrance, were a bit shop worn, and it's farming stuff, but it's really cool. One of the things that I did miss was the stuff that was at the entrance or was not labeled, and I wish they had been, but let's get on with it as we go. I don't know of any other museum that I've ever been in that had a bridge, not a bridge like this. And the history of this bridge is that initially it was 3 sections. It was then moved at least once in its history, and then in the process of being taken out of service, was one section was brought over and set up at the museum, which is really cool, and it is historic. So, and as you're looking at the signage, most of the signage in the museum is bilingual, English and Spanish, and kind of made it nice, kind of made it appropriate for New Mexico. I love the idea of farms and ranches, and this museum just really pushed me over the top. And you're looking at the signage and the equipment that they had on display. As I said, I thought the signage was absolutely fantastic. So as you're looking through this is, and I'm going to read one of them that's already passed you. The Lister planter, also known as a metal buster planter, is an alternative to the crop row planter. It's a double plow that creates an open furrow along with a seed box and a chute below the plow. This mechanism puts the seed at the bottom of the furrow, which is better in areas with less rainfall and where getting moisture to the plant is especially important. Lister planters first emerged in the 1860s and were especially popular in the Southwest because of the semi-arid nature of farming in the region. A few modernized forms of Lister planter are still available today. Really cool sign. It shows you the pictures of what they are. They have them on display, and on a lot of the equipment sitting in very nicely placed rows where you can walk around and look at them, get good pictures. There's signage like this, and I absolutely love that. I'm not trying to stay in sync with the photos, sorry. The architectural display that we left just a little bit ago was really huge, interesting. You could walk in and it had a 3D effect to it, which was kind of cool. There was a fair amount of livestock around the museum, all very nicely signed, all in very clean, well taken care of cages and pens, where you could get up and you could get halfway decent photos of them. Unfortunately, some of the photos you're going to see the pen material blocking the way, but I really like the fact that they had the animals on display. They were in good physical condition. They were in clean, healthy pens. They were out in the open. They were acting normal. They weren't moping, whatever. Really kind of cool. It shows that the museum was taking a lot of care of their livestock. The horses and cattle were outside, so the horse and cattle barn was empty, but it was clean, very nicely constructed. A lot of displays inside the barn about animals, how they the differences in the animals and whatever. It was, and I love the architecture of the barn. I love the woodwork that was done into the barn. One of my hobbies is leatherworking, and if you watched at least one of my other videos I've got on how to make a wallet, and the museum has the Saddle Makers of the Southwest presentation, and it is an absolutely huge display. It talks about a fair amount of the saddle makers that were in the Southwest and in New Mexico in particular, and how they built saddles, the tools that they used to make the saddles, and the things like the sewing machines and whatever else, which was really cool. We spent probably half an hour just walking around here reading the displays, particularly on how a roping saddle or western saddle is built. I mean, when I ride, I prefer to do that. I prefer to use that saddle. But it was the first time I'd seen how they were actually built. I had access to horses when I was growing up, and when we moved to where we are now in Southern California, we decided that we were going to have a horse that our kids could ride. So we had Balladurana, a registered Arabian, and had several saddles for her, and the kids rode her for about 5 years. And then we sold her off as the kids got other interests. I'm going to move on to show you an outside area and just a panoramic view of some of the museum as we go. You're looking at, as I just swept from left to right, and I had to expand it a little bit. The camera picked it up as a little blurry at normal speed. Look at the mountains in the background, but look at some of the display area of this museum. It was totally impressive. The tools, implements, enablers, whatever, that a farmer or a rancher needs depends on a wide number of factors: the type of soils he's dealing with, the type of crops he's going to be working with, what type of livestock he's going to have, things like that. And as you're looking at the signage and the items that are on display in this museum, it was really nice that they went into detail to explain why this item should be on display with the educational level that is there, showing you and telling you how they worked and what function they did. And to me, that was really cool. This is a very educational museum to the individual who's willing to stand there and read it and take a look at what's there. It answers a lot of questions. As the farms went from pure hand power to device assisted to animal assisted to mechanical, the transition on the farms significantly changed. And this is, as we made those transitions, this is when we also had the manpower to get away from the farm. So the farm was not a 3, 5, 7 person, a family operation, but part of the family operation. So we had the additional manpower to form the plants, the manufacturing sites that would become the age of the machines, the age of the manufacturers, shortly to follow this, as our technologies changed. And really some interesting machines in this place. We were at the New Mexico Farm and Ranch Heritage Museum on Monday, June 2nd, 2025, and it was a almost clear sky day. You can see some of the clouds in the background. It was fairly warm. The museum has a lot of open area, open air displays. It does have building displays. Some of the buildings are air conditioned, some of them aren't. But if you're going to go, you can bring your own water in, as I understand it. Well, we did. I think we did. They ask you not to bring other things in, but I think we brought a water jug in, and we did a fair amount of walking. I would say, to see the entire museum, we walked probably 1.5 miles. We traipsed all over this museum. The grounds of the museum are well maintained, so walking on them is not a problem. There are some small stones and whatever else around, but there's no big ruts. There's no obstacles to walking around. One of the really enjoyable places, the whole museum was enjoyable, was the dairy spot, and the dairy spot talks very intensely about the various breeds of cows that are in the dairy operation, and how they're taken care of, and the production of the dairy products and the techniques that are used. And I was laughing. I know why. I understand a bit of physics. One of the displays explains why you need salt to make ice cream in your homemade ice cream maker. And I will tell you, the first time I tried to make homemade ice cream in an ice cream maker, I didn't follow the instructions because it didn't make sense, because I didn't understand how salt and ice work together to create cold. To my misfortune or mistake, I did not realize that there's actually a flow through most of the museum and in the museum exhibits, and you were going to see another one of the mistakes later on, that if you know where to start, the museum has a logical process of moving from display to display to display. In the dairy barn, it was explaining the various details about the various breeds of cows that are used in the dairy process, and what other animals in the world are used for milk production, which is kind of interesting. I've lived in foreign countries and had other animals' milk, and I'll stick with cow's milk. Maybe I'm prejudiced. One of the things I did not see, and I didn't look for it, I didn't even think about it till I was actually making the video, is the museum did not address, that I saw plainly or openly, the safety procedures that are associated with the dairy industry, and there are quite a few, because milk goes to a lot of people, and a lot of those people are very vulnerable. And by vulnerable, I mean have immune systems that aren't operating at their prime, either due to their age, young or old or impaired. When we left the dairy barn, we cruised a few other places, and we went back to the main building, and there's a main hall off the side of the main building, and we're going to enter that through a hallway. In the entry hallway is San Isidro, the patron saint of farmers and farm laborers, and a really interesting wooden horse sitting out in display, and a coach that was donated for display then, and they ask you obviously not to touch it, not to climb on it. Beautiful workmanship in these sort of items. In that main building, there's a large hall that you enter, and it has a multitude of displays in it. Life in early New Mexico as it progressed from prior to the times of the missions, the Spaniards, the conquistadors, up into modern times, and the ways that life in the area of New Mexico has changed. It was interesting to see how they had replicated the items or handled the items that had been donated to the museum to be displayed. And among other things, there is a museum here in San Diego County over in Vista, that the Antique Gas and Steam Engine Museum, that has an entire building dedicated to looms, and I actually want to go over and weave a rug just to say I did it. It's one of those things on my bucket list. So the Native Americans originally occupied the territories, the area of New Mexico. Conquistadors came in, they brought in what we would refer to as the beasts of burdens, the horses, the mules, the donkeys, and as the missions were established and their friars came in, changed or attempted to change the way civilization of the Native Americans went. And the rooms that were in this building were set up to portray some of the changes that took place as the area of New Mexico was colonized by the Europeans. Another one of my hobbies is woodworking, and I had the instructions on how to make a 10-spoke wheel, and they were very detailed, very precise, and it was a wheel that was about 14 inches in diameter. I went down to my workshop at the time and started building the parts, and I will tell you that's a lot of skill, and it far exceeded what I had, what I could do. And what I ended up was a whole lot of miscellaneous small parts, miscellaneous big parts in some cases, that got me nothing that looked like that would work as a wheel. So when I see wheels and I see how the technology is built, how the terminology is used and identified, I have a high degree of respect. Wheelwrights are precision machinists. That's all there is to it, and they are dealing with an interesting, a couple of interesting materials, in particular wood and metal. As we're cruising through that big hall, you can see a variety of the items that are on display. There's a fair amount of wagons, carts, farm implements, items to make living a little bit easier in a time long gone. I actually loved the kitchen because one of the farms that I got to visit occasionally while I was growing up, had a kitchen that was fairly similar to this. And it was this museum brought back a whole lot of memories. In one of the towns there was a general store, and the general store sold everything. That's why they're called general stores. So kind of cool. Long before we had what we now identify as Walmart, Target, Costco, whatever, as we go through here. As I said earlier, there seems to be a flow through a number of the museum's exhibits, and I didn't pick it up until I got to the end of this one. This one has to do with a guy called Henry McCarty. And you actually know Henry McCarty, but you don't know him as Henry McCarty, because at one point in his life he decided he was going to change his name and become William H. Bonney. And if that doesn't ring a bell, it's Billy the Kid. And if that rings a bell, and then the names that you're seeing pop up here, Tunstall and Chisholm, John Chisholm, think of the movie that John Wayne starred in, Chisholm, as John Chisholm, with Forrest Tucker and Ben Johnson and a number of other people, and the story of the range wars that were initiated, the people that were killed, the way they were killed, how the West survived with these. It addresses the factual issues of the range wars of, I believe it's Lincoln County, and the impact that players had on it, like John Chisholm, Tunstall, and Billy the Kid, William Bonney, Henry McCarty. Hoping you paused the video to read the slide on the house. The house was basically the only store in the area. It was run by a couple of people who were after the rest of the assets of the area. They monopolized what they had. They used every technique they could get to win, to take over the area, and cattle rustling, whatever, they had to do it. And they had their own group of rustlers called the Boys. So in this whole process of the range wars and the Lincoln County wars, you had the Boys, the Regulators, Chisholm and his guys, which were quote-unquote legitimate. You had the House guys. You had all these people playing for winning stakes, and not all of them were playing with legal hands. The exposition dealing with the range wars, Billy the Kid, William Bonney, Henry McCarty, same player, went through a very large, very well detailed explanation of history as they're presenting it, and I have no reason to dispute them. Interesting that it's kind of known, those who have the money make the rules, and if you get the money illegally, you still get to make the rules. So this was just the icing on the cake for this museum. The New Mexico Farm and Ranch Heritage Museum was absolutely fantastic, and this was just the absolute icing on the cake, because it is so much of what developed New Mexico and how it was developed. We are walking out of the exhibits for the Lincoln County Range Wars, Billy the Kid, William H. Bonney, Henry McCarty, whatever you want to call them. Really good presentation, really good museum, and we're walking out into the parking lot as we go on this. And our visit this museum was 2.5 to 3 hours. We did a lot of walking. A lot of it was outside If you're going to come, bring water, bring sun protection, bring comfortable shoes. It is a very child-friendly museum in my opinion, but they are going to get a lot of walking. And once you pay and do your admission thing, you can walk out to the parking lot and come back in, walk out and come back in. That's not a problem. And there are a couple of air-conditioned buildings and a couple of cool buildings as shaded type buildings in the museum, so that's also not a problem. As we're leaving the museum, I want to go back out to the front and explain something. As you're looking at these tractors, on the side of these tractors are these big drums, and those are the power takeoffs. Tractors that only pull things aren't as useful as tractors that can power other things. So it's not uncommon for a tractor to have a power takeoff PTO, that drum thing on the side that you can make spin under engine power without the tractor moving at all. Also to have power takeoff at the back of the tractor so you can hook something up to it behind it through a drive shaft type operation. This was a fantastic museum. Highly recommend you stop by. It deserves the attention. We really enjoyed it, and we picked a beautiful day to be there. It was a bit warm, it was a bit sunny. We had our big hats on, and we used sunscreen. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in another one.